Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, I got a super fun, super exciting, and very unlikely video for you guys today, and that is because ZSNES is back as Super ZSNES, and if that name sounds familiar, it was one of the older Super Nintendo emulators, and now it has been completely redeveloped from the ground up. It's going to use your GPU to do some of the effects you see on screen today, and it was definitely something that no one had on their 2026 bingo card. It's one of those things. Emulation's always amazing, getting new emulators is always a great time, but this was not one I would have guessed that if you asked me what I thought would happen in emulation in April. But then again, the Neo Geo AES is coming back, so honestly, April is just filled with things that you didn't see coming. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. And obviously what you're seeing here on screen, Super Mario World definitely looks completely different than it ever did back in the day. And if we move over to something like F-Zero, again, this is actually using the GPU with some pre-configured things within Super ZSNES to give you something that looks absolutely more like a Super Nintendo 32-bit console than the 16-bit console that you had back under your televisions in the 90s that you still have under your TVs today in 2026. And this is definitely absolutely a fun development because honestly, Super Nintendo is still one of the best 2D consoles ever made, and getting a new emulator with new features is always going to be a fun time. Now, I totally get it, this isn't going to hit for everybody because not everyone wants visual enhancements on their games, but the people that do, some of the stuff you're going to see Super ZSNES perform, absolutely mind-blowing, and that really is fun. Having an entire from the ground up new emulator for the Super Nintendo that can just do all these fun visual party tricks is a 10 out of 10 in my book. But honestly, some of the stuff like the rewinding and fast forwarding of your gameplay, which I'll show you later in the video, is probably my favorite new feature. But this is just so amazing that we have this. We're going to be going over all of the features and new things today. So as we actually get into the front end here, you're going to see that there is a warning that this is still the first build. So again, don't go in and expect absolutely everything to be 100% perfect. And you'll see there is a list of the supported enhanced games. As far as the configuration and options are concerned, this will automatically bind to whatever controller you have hooked up to your PC so long as that controller is read by anything else. I have an Xbox Series X controller, and immediately upon launching this, it bound to my controller, no issues whatsoever. You'll see you also have resolution options and a bunch of other visual options as well. Now you don't need to enable the enhancements on the game, you can just treat this like a basic Super Nintendo emulator, but honestly we have stuff like BSNES for that as well. When you go back into something like F-Zero again, this looks like it was made for a completely different class of hardware than the Super Nintendo. All of the Mode 7 effects here being handled by the GPU, not being completely emulated on the CPU, is something that you don't usually see for this generation of consoles. Honestly, if this thing continues development, it's basically going to be the duck station for Super Nintendo, where you think to yourself, yes, you can play a PlayStation 1 game at its stock visual settings, but you can also absolutely enhance the ever-loving hell out of it to make an experience that was never possible on the PlayStation 1. That is what Super ZSNES is doing here. Let's move over to something like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, another game on the enhancement list, and you'll see when you get in here, it almost has like a watercolor painterly look to it. And I totally understand, again, this isn't going to be for everyone. The nice thing is you can absolutely turn all of the enhancements off and just use this as a standard Super Nintendo emulator. Just be aware, again, it is early in its development, so not every single game will be supported. But I absolutely want to see Super ZSNES get developed into something that will run 100% of the game library. And when this got announced that they were going to be doing a live stream late last night Sunday, I absolutely tuned in. I kind of got some information, and you knew full well I was always planning on making a video today. And that again is just how hyped this release truly was. And this is from the original ZSNES team, and there is a website that you can go to as well. Link in the description down below where you can pick this thing up and read all of its features and see all the cool fun things it does under the hood. But right here, playing around in Super Ghouls and Ghosts, a game I am very familiar with, I'm going to be showing you how the rewind feature works because I think that is my favorite thing. Right here, you're going to see Arthur is going to take a death. If we actually go into the menu in just a moment, you'll see down below you have all of the different enhancements. There is the texture, the overclock, widescreen, audio, high res, and the border. But below that, you're also going to see a little scroll wheel that you can play around with, and all of these things can be turned on and turned off in real time, so you can kind of just toggle them back and forth. You'll see here all of the different options. If I want to turn off overclock, not recommended, it would work, but if you actually go down here, you can scrub back to where you died earlier and restart your gameplay from there. We're also going to restart our first soundtrack sample, so listen, and I'll be right back with a lot more fun. See, a completely different visual presentation, enhancements on audio, and a bunch of other things under the hood make Super ZSNES one of the most entertaining things I've seen on the emulation front in April, and it's not like we have been devoid of other emulation improvements and even new emulators in 2026. Honestly, it feels like retro gaming emulation is absolutely in a new golden era as far as everything it can do. Let's move over to Super Metroid, or Metroid 3 as Nintendo likes to call it, to go through some of these enhancements as well. But so far, you leave me a comment down below and you tell me these enhancements yes or no, because I totally understand it's going to be one of those subjective things. You're either going to love it or you're not going to like it whatsoever. But again, the nice thing is these are not forced. By default, they are on, but it takes all of about 2 seconds to turn them off and go back to your standard gameplay. And I would say Super Metroid here, a very fun look as well, because it is enhancing the visuals, but not going so far as to look absolutely garbagey. And it's one of those things, it's hilarious in and of itself that something like a Super Nintendo emulator is actually going to use your GPU to draw these effects and actually have these enhancements, because you would think that Super Nintendo would be a CPU only emulation experience, but Super ZSNES is going to use your GPU as well. And even though there really isn't a stated spec, I'm sure that you can throw a potato GPU with this, maybe even something like an NVIDIA 900 series, and be absolutely perfectly fine and have a ton of overhead, because it's not like this is a very demanding experience whatsoever. And the best part is actually playing these games, interacting with them. There doesn't seem to be any latency in the controls that causes any issues, and again, it's just kind of like playing something like Super Metroid, except in a completely different look. And it's not like this is all brand new. You can definitely enhance the visuals on other emulators, but the way Super ZSNES packages this up and ships it, absolutely going to be, I think, a lot of people's new favorite Super Nintendo emulator, especially if they kind of want to play around with the visual imagery of what Super Nintendo games could look like. Because just think of it like this, it's almost like an alternate reality where Nintendo actually released a Super Nintendo 32-bit or an Ultra Nintendo 32 versus the Nintendo 64 we got that really prioritized stuff like 3D graphics. And as we escape here, let's move into something like Super Mario World, because this one, the brighter the visuals, the more you can actually see the enhancements. You can see the resolution scaling on all of the different quote-unquote textures, even though of course they're just sprites and background layers. And there's just something about this that really looks like somebody sat down at a sketchbook and drew this out on watercolor paper. It absolutely hits as far as the visual aesthetic is concerned, and honestly, if you're going to play the game again, maybe just play it here so you can get a completely different vibe. But one more soundtrack sample, I'll be right back with a little bit more enhanced Super ZSNES footage. So yeah, absolutely looks super interesting, sounds great, plays great, and again, it is just one of those things. Having something like this available in 2026, not what I expected. And you will see you can do some widescreen support in select games, but you do have this slightly grayed overlay that I couldn't figure out how to turn off, as far as where it would show the bounding box of what would be a 4:3 presentation and what would be a widescreen presentation. But again, this is the first draft of Super ZSNES, so I'm sure it's going to get better. But this is why I love to say, this is why retro gaming is making a comeback. Something like Super Nintendo emulation has been a quote-unquote solved problem for basically decades now, but that doesn't mean developers, including the original ZSNES team, can't go in and rethink exactly what they did in the first place and make it even better and make it different. because now we're at the stage you can basically emulate any console out there you could possibly want. So developers are going in and thinking to themselves, now that we can do anything, maybe we should do it all over again in a completely different manner. And that's what Super ZSNES is. So again, if you want to play around with this one, the link's in the description below. And I'm not really going to do a setup tutorial on this one because honestly there is no BIOS, so there really isn't anything you need to worry about. You open up the Super ZSNES, you go ahead and load in your legally owned ROM, and then you're off to the races and can kind of play around with the configuration from there. So unless a bunch of you ask me for a tutorial on this one, and again, anytime a bunch of people ask me for something, it seems like nobody watches. It's pretty hilarious. I probably won't be making one of these, but this is just so much fun to see something like this in 2026. So we've gotten so many emulation updates with RPCS3, PCSX2, and Dolphin. I really didn't think we'd see a new Super Nintendo emulator this year or any year, but the year we are, it's existing and you can go play it today. Short of that, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.